at the end of the day, most people when they're working, they're not really life and death issues. And what might seem like a big issue today, a year from now, you might not even remember what the issue was and why you were so stressed about it. So obviously, you always want to do a good job, but you also have to kind of put things into perspective.
Welcome to TTalks, everybody, where we dive into the stories behind the leaders shaping our world. I'm your host, TJ Walia, and today we're joined by a remarkable figure in the financial services industry, Manjit Singh. Manjit is the Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer at Sun Life. He brings a wealth of experience and is responsible for leading the company's finance organization, including finance, tax, capital, corporate development, investor relations, and strategic finance initiatives. With more than 25 years of finance, strategy, risk, and treasury experience, Manjit has worked across Canada, the US, and Europe. And I am absolutely thrilled to have him join us for our premiere episode to share his insights and personal journey. Welcome to TTalks, Manjit.
Great to be here, TJ.
Awesome. Manjit, can you help give our viewers a quick introduction about yourself? I've kind of gone through a whole slew of things that you've already accomplished, but I'd love to get a summary of what your journey has been.
Yeah, no, it's great. I've now been in the workforce for almost 3 decades, so that makes me feel a little old. But the time has been wonderful. I've had the opportunity to work with great people across that time with great organizations, and I've got a chance to experience a lot of different roles. I've also had the opportunity to work in different locations. I've worked in Canada, I've worked in the US, and I've worked in the UK, and I'm just about to head off to work in Asia.
That's incredible. And it's been 3 decades. It goes by in a blink of an eye, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it's
it does.
How fast all that goes. And especially with all that you accomplished as well and going through all that, there's always one milestone after another. I'd love to understand something, even for my own self, but even for our viewers. Given your journey, I think my first question will come down to that pivotal moment. We all have that pivotal moment, Manjit, where there's something deliberate that happens, but we don't see it or recognize it at the time. But when we look back, we're like, wow, that was the deciding factor on why I am where I am today. Yeah. I'd love to understand what that looks like for you.
That's a great question. And there's just so many things that happen in your life that, get you to where you are. And of course, there's so many people in your life that help you get to where you are. So, there's so many things I can talk about with that question. I started my career in Price Waterhouse, and that was a great training ground. It really taught me to learn about different industries. It taught me how to work with different people inside the firm, with my clients, to really work in a fast-paced environment at a very young age. So I think that was a really good foundation, but I knew that that's not what I wanted my career to be. So I would say I accidentally stumbled upon a career in banking. I was approached by a headhunter to take a job from Price Waterhouse at Bank of Montreal. And that really set me on now what's turned out to be, and like I said, an almost a 30-year career in financial services. And I didn't know it at the time, but of course, the Canadian financial services industry is such a strong industry and has really grown over that time. So in some ways, I think that move, which was accidental, kind of getting into financial services, really helped to kind of chart where I am now. If I had gone to a different industry, like I don't know where I'd be.
That's, it's interesting you say that, and how many people I talk to that this kind of thing happens to. Personally, I was late for a professor of ours was late for a night class, and I was waiting outside and started talking to a gentleman. And I was always in tech and more in computer science, but started talking to a gentleman. He had worked at Microsoft, and for me, it was an aspiration to work for Microsoft. So that conversation led from one thing to another to an interview. And now when I look back at, my 2-decade career, it's completely transformed in terms of, what I was thinking versus where I ended up. Never can imagine these things, right? So
yeah, sometimes you just have to kind of be in the right place at the right time.
That's exactly it. But I think the important part is grasping those opportunities, right? A lot of people don't realize that there's opportunities that are presented to us. And sometimes you have to just take your gut and go with it, right? A lot of people kind of hesitate and push back.
Absolutely. Like I always sort of say, there's a cycle you have to kind of go through. I think you have to kind of do your job that you do, and especially the early part of your career, you have to kind of do your job well. And if you do your job well, you're going to get given opportunities. People will say, hey, that person, TJ, is a great person. I really like what he does. I'm going to get him to do something else. But to your point, you have to take that opportunity and then, reconvert that opportunity. The cycle just keeps going. And that's kind of what's kind of happened in my career is that, I was fortunate enough to be, given a lot of opportunities. But to your point, I also had to kind of take them.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And you're talking about the hard work aspect. My dad's always taught me this. He's an entrepreneur, and he basically said, if you want to be a really good employee, work there as if it's your own company, right?
Yeah.
And that's something I've learned, and that's what I've done since day one. Is go into any environment, any organization. It's like, okay, let's make something happen without thinking, am I just a paid salaried employee, or
Yeah.
what's in it for me? Leave all that aside. You've signed up for something. Go all in, right? Is how I
Yeah.
look at it.
Yeah, and I got some of the same advice too, right? Think about yourself as, even though you might be a salaried employee, but think of yourself as a consultant or someone that your company is paying for services every day, and you have to ask yourself, did I deliver some value that would warrant for them to kind of ask me back the next day? And in the same vein, like if you're running your own business, if your business is you, like you're a self-contractor, that means you have to invest in yourself, invest in new capabilities, invest in marketing for yourself, invest in building relationships. So you have to kind of make those investments.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And that takes me to my next question, which is more related toward decision making. Being in leadership, it's very critical to make the right decisions sometimes fairly quickly. We've seen examples of bad decisions just in the news recently with OpenAI scenario with Sam Altman and the whole thing that kind of blew up. How do you navigate making tough calls and tough decisions, especially under a lot of pressure?
Yeah, look, I've been fortunate enough to have a lot of good people that I work with. Good sounding boards. I think asking for help when you need it is never a bad thing. It took me a number of years to figure out that in my career. I thought in the beginning of my career, if you did that, maybe it made you seem weak, or maybe you didn't know what you were talking about. But I think if you think about issues and you have analyze them to the best of your abilities, and you talk to someone and say, hey, here's how I'm thinking about this, here's why what I think we should do, and why, and is there any fatal flaws, and do you see something that I don't see? I think people will be very happy to help you.
Love that, love that. So basically what you're saying is usually the decisions aren't made on your own. It's getting a team, getting collaborative support. So it's not really authoritative. It's saying do as I say, but hey, let's work this out.
Yeah, and I think and that's the other angle of diversity, right? Like you bring your own experiences, your own lens, and of course all your own biases, whether they be conscious or subconscious, to everything that you do. And if you let other people in, they're going to bring perspectives that you might not have thought about. And my experience has been is that when you do that, you always come to better decisions.
Love it, love it. No, thank you for that. That's very, very insightful. So with all of the decision making and the work that we're going through, my next question is about work-life balance. It's a topic of much discussion. It's something I'm very passionate about personally, given my own experiences with burnout and trying to navigate some of my peers and organizations through those waters. How do you personally manage those demands of professional and personal life?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think it's an individual question too, right? Because it means something different for everybody else. So I don't think I can speak on behalf of anyone else in terms of what they should or shouldn't do. I mean, I can only share what I've done. Like, I think the other part of that phrase is balance, and sometimes people equate balance to be 50-50, and I don't think it, in my experience, it hasn't operated that way. I mean, you have to live a whole life, your personal life, your work life, time for yourself, time for your family, time for your community. And at different moments of your life, that may require different amounts of focus. At some points, you may require, a much bigger focus in your personal life because something is going on, and you may need to find that extra time. You spend 70% of your time there, and there might be other times because there's a big project at work, or you're doing a big acquisition that that might require you to work an extra amount on that side. So to me, it's really kind of making sure that you understand what your situation is. Obviously, it helps if you have a lot of support in your life, your family, your friends that understand that. And then making sure that you also find times that things are really, really important to you, whether that's, your child's concert, whether that's working in the morning, whether that's, finding some time to practice your faith, like whatever it is that you find really important, that gives you that joy, that comfort. I think you need to always find time for that.
No, I love that. And, you hit a couple of things on the head there. One is that 50-50 perspective, right? We think it's supposed to be a divide of I'm on for work and I'm off. There's a friend of mine. I love what he puts in his emails for his organization, and he's one of the executives at one of the school boards, and he basically says, my working hours may not be your working hours, exactly. Right? And I love that, because that basically, from a leadership perspective, sets the tone and says, you don't, just because I'm traveling, or I might be in Asia or another time zone, doesn't mean you need to be responding right now, right? It
Yeah,
really sets that tone for the team members. So I love that
yeah,
aspect.
yeah, yeah,
Awesome. So moving on to the next one, you kind of touched on it earlier, is really about mentorship, right? Mentorship can
yeah.
really be transformative. It's something that a lot of people don't seek or don't really connect to because they might think that they're seen as being weak or not knowing enough. What are your perspectives on that? Could you tell us about anyone that significantly impacted your career, or what would that look like from the mentorship realm?
Yeah, I mean, there's been, like I said in my opening remarks, I've been really blessed to have worked with wonderful people throughout my whole career. And many times they believed more in me than maybe I believed in myself. I would say, I never kind of sought out what I would call a formal mentorship relationship where, I had, scheduled meetings or anything like that. And I never was that organized or frankly, I didn't know that's what I had to do. But I think where mentorship came in was, I watched people. I sort of followed what they did. I understood how they handled certain situations that I really respected, and I tried to emulate myself after, along those lines. So I kind of took the best of the people around me and sort of said that person communicates really well, or that person, works with their team really well, or that person, really thinks about how to make decisions really well. And I kind of tried to, have conversations like this with them, that were periodic and sort of ask for advice. And so you can looking back, that was a form of mentorship. And sometimes people also don't differentiate mentorship with sponsorship. Mentorship is sort of more, in my view, someone where you can seek advice from, and they can help you understand, different situations they're in. They can talk about their own experiences, like we're talking about today. To me, sponsorship really requires them having knowledge of you. They know how you work, what you can achieve, how you behave, and based upon that, they're willing to support you in what you want to do next. And I think sponsorship is also very important. Seeking active sponsorship.
Yeah, no, I love that. I don't think a lot of people talk about the sponsorship aspect, right? They don't see it the same way. And I've seen sometimes it's looked upon as favoritism in an organization as well, but they don't realize the relationship you're building. In my career, it's always been the same thing. You need to make yourself be known of, this is what I want to do. If no one knows what you're doing, how are they going to, get you in for a role or an opportunity? So make yourself visible, make yourself known, build those connections and relationships, right? So mentorship isn't directly that one-on-one, but it's really awareness as well. I love the sponsorship aspect of it.
Yeah, and you have to play an active role in your career. I worked with, one of my mentors, or people I looked up to, whatever word you want to use, was one of my bosses was Colleen Johnson. She was a CFO for many years at TD Bank, and she had a great saying, and she said, "Well, no one's more interested in your career than you are." What that really means is you have to kind of be active about it. You have to tell people what you want to do. You have to then think about, well, if that's where I want to go, what steps do I need to take? What development do I need to have? What opportunities do I need to seek out and convert? So you have to play an active role in kind of managing your career.
It's funny you say that, because a lot of the times people have that resistance with management and say, well, they're not giving me an opportunity, or they're not seeing this. Well, if you don't know what you want to do, how's that manager, supervisor going to, really conceptualize and say, oh, this is what this person needs to be doing? They're not going to be able to land on that. So no, that's amazing what you've put out there. Next section I want to jump into is mental health, another area that I'm super, super, super passionate about. It's being recognized, as a vital in the workspace now. And how do you prioritize it for yourself and your teams? Is that something that you're deliberate about? Is it something you're passive about? I'd love to understand that.
Yeah, Sun Life overall, given what we do, and we provide support for our members in so many ways, and mental health, as you sort of said, is growing in importance. So we have a lot of tools that we provide to both our members and our employees that can help them with some of the mental health issues they're facing, both through digital means, like we have a mental health digital coach, but also through other connections that we can make for them. So it's very much a key area of focus at Sun Life and for our members. On a personal level, I think it really goes back to what we were talking about before. I think you have to have other things in your life that are relief valves, right? So you can kind of go back to work, or that's a stress point for you, to think about, like, do you have things that bring you calmness? Do you have people in your life that you can talk to? Do you have other things that you can, put your attention to, that maybe if one thing is not going well in your life, another thing you can focus on? So I think it goes back to sort of making sure that you have a whole life and you don't define yourself by one element in your life.
I love that. I thought you were going to say people that bring calmness in your life, because that's also important, right? Having
People,
the
for
right
sure.
people. Yeah, because
100%.
you're
There's so
surrounded by
many
the
people in my life that provide me with support and also keep you grounded, right? If you think about sometimes, the mental health is caused by issues at work. And, at the end of the day, most people when they're working, they're not really life and death issues. And what might seem like a big issue today, a year from now, you might not even remember what the issue was and why you were so stressed about it. So obviously, you always want to do a good job, but you also have to kind of put things into perspective.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's so, it's so important what you said there, right? You won't even remember what caused you that stress. You might remember the stressful moment, saying that I was
Right.
freaking out or panicking out or something happened, but you won't remember why or what the triggers were. All right. So jumping into the last question before we go into the thrilling rapid fire segment, productivity. What
Yeah.
strategies or what one specific strategy do you think or you use or practice that you've found to be most effective in getting the most done for yourself?
I think just really focusing on what you're doing. Right now there's just so many things that can distract you, whether it's an email, a phone call, a temptation to kind of go to a website. And I think that makes it really difficult to kind of get things done. And so I think really blocking enough time and devoting your full attention to something, I think really helps to kind of get through the finish line.
Awesome. Awesome. I love that. Just being focused on one thing and just being deliberate about it. All right. So we're going to jump into a rapid fire questions. So this is going to be a point where I ask you a question and you respond with an answer.
Okay.
So let's see how this goes. Tea or coffee?
Actually, both. Coffee in the morning, tea in the afternoon.
All right. There we go. PC or Mac?
PC.
All right. Your wake up time?
6 o'clock.
Okay. This might be an interesting one, but the last thing you touch before going to bed?
Last thing I touch, probably my remote on my TV.
Okay. All right. Who would win a fight between Iron Man and Batman?
I would say Iron Man.
Okay. Yeah. So if animals could talk, which would you want to chat with?
Which one I would chat with? Wow, I've never been asked that one before. Like a tiger or a lion, something that's like aggressive or ferocious.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough. And this is one that I think all our viewers are going to be interested in, given your background in the insurance industry. Term life or whole life?
Whole life. I think you want to make sure you're protected for your whole life. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Manjit, for joining us today. I really appreciate it. Had a fun and exciting conversation.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Manjit, for sharing your valuable insights and experiences with us today. It's been a true pleasure. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to TTalks for more conversations with the leaders who are shaping our future. Until next time, keep inspiring and keep striving.